Welcome to everybody, and cheers. So, as Tom said, we do run these sessions in person now and again, and we also, through the lockdowns, we do quite a few virtual ones in our social distance in, but generally they are recorded in the tub somewhere, nattering about something. We don't have an agenda or a topic, just talking about something in the time it takes us to drink a pint of something. Record it, stick it out on the internet, and somehow people seem to enjoy it. Yeah, we don't have a theme or a topic in mind. One of the things that we were asking to do in the breakout room was just to have a chat and think about some topics that are going on that you might be interested in talking a little bit more about, or hearing Paul and less natter about. We usually explain what we're drinking and where we are. So my background is a pub in my hometown, Cheltenham. It's called The Restoration, and it was a teenage haunt of mine. It's over 350 years old. It's the oldest pub in Cheltenham, actually. And I'm drinking this, which is a collaboration between Brewdog and a mental health charity called SAD AF. Now, to me, AF stands for something different than what it means on the tin. What it means on the tin is alcohol-free. So I've got a case of this. It's the hashtag is I am whole. It's about promoting mental health, and in particular seasonal affective disorder, which sort of affects me a lot of time of year. So cheers. What have you got, Mr. Goddard?
Well, as Geoff will know, I'm doing dry January, and I'm really enjoying it. So I've got it's a Copperberg. I'm a big cider drinker, so if you can see that's a little Copperberg mixed berry alcohol-free cider. I think obviously, yeah, it's it just tastes like fizzy Ribena, really. So it's like a child's drink, really. So yeah, that's what I'm on tonight.
For in the chat, it is indeed a bespoke Agile Pubcast glass.
Very nice.
Available with other merchandise like the Agile Pubcast bottle opener.
Can we get one? Can we go on the website and order them?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
cool.
That.com. So yeah, whatever you want to talk about, let us know in the chat. We'll have a little bit of small talk while you have to think about that. So what's where are you? What's that pub? You don't know, Paul, do you?
I don't know where the pub is. We were trying to work it out by deduction. There's a very stationary barman behind me who's not moved at all. If people zoom in really closely on my on the bar, there is some reference to London or the Thames, I think. But yeah, I stole the photo from Google, so I'm not sure where it is.
I was imagining that some of the conversation today would be around the restrictions changing tomorrow. I imagine that's on people's minds. I got that wrong today. I thought it was today that restrictions had changed. So I got on the bus and I got on the train without a mask on. Why has everyone still got their masks on? I thought this had changed. And then so I Googled it and I realized it was tomorrow. And I thought, well, I can't put my mask on now because I've been sat on the train for 15 minutes. And I basically made my stand of I'm medically exempt, therefore that's why I'm not wearing a mask. Putting a mask on now would make me look sick. So I stuck it out for the next 15 minutes, but then wore it on the way back.
But I think, because I checked, I looked at the BBC website today. I think the guidance for working from home has changed. So that's already changed, I think. But it's the masks on public transport and stuff and shops that changes tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, that changed last week, didn't it?
Yeah.
Working from home changed on the day that it got announced, didn't it?
Yes, it was pretty immediate. That was, yeah.
So for me that was a confusing thing.
Confusing message
around the transparency. So I guess if they were going to increase the restrictions, then having some advance warning I think is quite useful because people don't want to get caught out. But if you're reducing the restrictions, why is advance warning necessary? Not like you're going to get caught doing something. So that just confused people. There we go. So yeah, I presume most of you are still working from home. Any of you? Thumbs up if you are going back to the office or thinking about going back to the office now. Restrictions have changed. Nobody? Sort of, maybe. Most people know. I don't know.
Probably hybrid working for us all, isn't it?
Well, so that's the term, isn't it? But I think hybrid working is going to be different for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the company I work for are kind of saying that office work is now possible, so you can go back into the office because the guidance changed. But the company's still got their own kind of guidelines, and one of which is, limit large gatherings of people. And I kind of see that as the only real advantage of going to the office, is having those kind of face-to-face interactions with larger groups. So actually, the appeal to go into the office isn't really there for me until the company's guidance changes.
Yeah. Would large be 7?
I guess it's open to interpretation, but I guess any more than 4, they're kind of suggesting is a large group.
I think it also depends on the layout of your office, doesn't it, as well? The idea that, if you've got large open plan areas and big, spacious, high ceilinged meeting rooms, then you generally will feel less claustrophobic anyway. And I think, that will probably have a bearing on it.
At company, you can go back into the office, but you can't book a meeting room or a collaboration space for more than an hour.
Okay.
Limited by time.
That could be an interesting constraint, though, right? Rather than how long is this going to take? It's how much can we do in an hour.
Gives it a bit of focus, doesn't it? We've only got an hour. We've got to use it effectively.
Absolute time boxing.
Yeah. We used to find that people banging on the door. We've booked this meeting. Get out.
You forget about those things.
You still have them.
There was I don't know if it's true or not, but there was someone told me, it might be like kind of one of these urban myths, that in Amazon they instituted a kind of a lean canvas policy for meeting room bookings. So if you really wanted the meeting room, you'd have to basically fill out a 15-minute lean canvas in order to justify its booking. And they found that people just didn't bother. So there's loads of meeting room space because people couldn't be bothered to go through the process. I didn't really want the room that much. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Just one of those stories.
What were the consequences?
Consequences of what?
Well, so I could imagine there would be upsides to that, fewer unnecessary meetings. But equally, I can imagine some downsides where people who could have benefited from being in a room together didn't.
Yeah, or just go for a walk, go elsewhere. It's not a bad thing.
So, I mean, for me, I like the experimental nature of it. But I'd like to know what the hypothesis was and whether it was proven.
I suppose it was to cut down on the unnecessary meetings. The idea, if you can't justify why you need a meeting in 15 minutes, then you don't really need the meeting.
Conversely, you can see that if there's an open meeting room, then you just jump in it.
Yeah. So if that's not top of the agenda, because you're all going to be staying at home and you're happy to stay at home anyway, what else is hot news, hot topics for people in Northampton?
Any questions? Any hot potatoes to throw in there?
I guess one of the biggest issues, isn't it, about being remote is, I suppose, the engagement thing is, I suppose, like the cameras on thing, and I don't think people are maybe potentially not as engaged, maybe being remote. I mean,
I was about to say exactly the same thing, David.
Darren?
Yeah, so it's been a constant struggle for the last 2 years, keeping people engaged in meetings. And you always know when they're not is when you refer to them and go, sorry, I missed that. What is it? Because they're off doing something else on their iPhone, whatever.
Yeah.
And are there any little tools, I guess, for keeping people engaged in meetings? And it was harder for us, actually, for the first year at Barclays. The network didn't cope, so we couldn't have video on at all. So they could be doing whatever in their PJs, boxer shorts, dancing around, who knows? But
yeah. My son actually, he was struggling with one of his lessons, and so we know somebody out of school who he's doing GCSEs, who offered some one-to-one sort of tuition. And I picked him up from it the other day. And I said, how was it? He said, it was really good. He said, she explained stuff, which was good, but she also knew when I was zoning out. And so she brought me back. So in the classroom, they'll be talking to somebody else, and I'll zone out, and I don't realize I've zoned out, and like 20 minutes have gone by. So, but in that, she knew when I was zoning out and brought me back with a question. And I think that's the hard thing, is in a room you can, it's not about sensing it. I don't think it's a spidey sense thing. You just got more cues to notice.
Well, the snoring used to be a good sign.
One of the best facilitation tips that I heard was, if you want to make sure someone's engaged, before you start talking around that subject, you'd say, so I'm going to start talking about this, or I'm going to mention this topic, and Darren, I'd like to come back to you when I've finished talking to hear what you really think. So you actually kind of call someone out before you've started talking about it, and then they're pretty much tuned into exactly everything you're saying and they know you're waiting for you to finish. So it's more individual, but it certainly helps focus that person on what you're saying.
Well, I like that technique, and it reminds me of that. Well, it was when I was doing some kind of neuroscience-y NLP type training or something like that. That was talking about different areas of the brain, and how even in a really noisy room, you can hear your name being mentioned across the room, because it flags something and it gets your attention, and you then lose focus on whatever conversation you were having, because you just know someone over there is talking about you.
Yeah.
And that, whatever triggers there are, because it's not just your name, it's anything that you're interested in, really. And so there are probably a number of hot trigger words that you could, your Darren Browns or whatever, could drop in subtly that will keep people not on their toes, but just keep activating that part of the brain. But my general tactic is short and sharp. Keep things not very, very short, and then move on to another thing, and then move on to another thing, and then wrap up and summarize or something like that. But so we were just talking beforehand. I experimented with Zoom training, and I don't do it. I don't like it. It went okay, but I don't like it. Paul's doing both. He's in the middle of an A/B test at the moment. So we did an in-person one Monday, Tuesday, and he's doing a virtual one Thursday, Friday to see what the appetite is. I've done virtual one-to-one coaching since before the pandemic over Zoom, and that worked brilliantly. In fact, there were a number of advantages to that for me. But training, not so much. Workshops, not so much. I've turned down a lot of work because I'm pretty convinced it won't work virtually. So I was asked to do a ways of working workshop, which wanted to get at the root of basically these groups of people who weren't collaborating particularly well. It was really complicated. And I just didn't think that would be resolved with everybody on Zoom and over the cameras. So I turned it down.
What made you decide? What made you think it would get resolved?
What was it?
Was there something more there than just the fact that they were collaborating?
So yeah, I mean there are some flags there that I can't share, but in general, the dynamics that I was hearing about the behaviours and the engagement, I would feel would need a lot more trust to be built. So I think trust in general is lower when you don't have physical proximity and you don't have physical contact. So I think if you've got a well-established group, then they will make things work. They will find ways around barriers. And I think that will only get better over time. And I think it's got significantly better because it had to get significantly better in the last 18 months, but there's still a hell of a long way to go. My worry, so talking about this engagement thing, is having been part of teams and organizations when this all started kicking off and seeing it throughout. I've seen engagement levels. I wish I'd sort of tracked it somehow. I'm sure some people have. Engagement levels dropped significantly over the last 18 months because the honeymoon period's worn off. People are getting a bit fed up with it. The exceptions that they were making, the concentration they were making, it wasn't sustainable for the long term. And I was saying to Paul, I was reading an article by someone who was predicting that 2022 is going to be the year of the employee because they can basically demand whatever working conditions they want at the moment. There's more jobs than people, and employers are struggling to offer whatever they can to get talent. She's worried that 2023 is going to be the year of what she calls the employer regret, because they're going to be saddled with very, very flexible working policies and ineffective, inefficient processes and disengaged, isolated people, that once you've got them out of the office, it's going to be very difficult to get them back. And I don't know whether there's truth to that, but she was citing a number of studies around engagement, productivity, morale, that were a bit worrying if that's going to be the trend.
I think a lot of it is also novelty. Well, for me, as someone who, I was really looking forward this week to driving to Cardiff, just because, not because it's Cardiff, just because it's a day out. I've got I've got a little journey to do, and I can do the things that I used to do. I could put my headphones in and listen to music or whatever in the car and stuff, and listen to a podcast on the way, and go out for dinner, and all these things that I think there's an element of that people will miss, the idea of the social, the time, the journey to get, even the journey to get to work, the walk, or whatever it is, the cycle, the commute. Yes, it can be painful. I appreciate that, but there is a benefit to that. I remember being on a course a long time ago in BT, and I can't remember what the course was, but one thing I remember is it takes 20 minutes to decompress the day, and your journey home is a great way to do that. And the difference now for me, and probably many of us, is that our work is not 20 minutes from our home. It's become the same place. So from a work aspect, great, you're getting more work done because you're at home. But me personally, I'm finding it very difficult to separate the two sometimes. And the lines have become very blurred, and I'll be checking my emails well into the evenings, and I'll be getting up early, first thing in the morning. The first thing I'm doing is turning my machine on at 7 a.m, which I would never have done before. So the lines are becoming a lot more blurred, and for me that it was refreshing. Maybe not, it's not going to be every day for me, but just to have a journey, to go somewhere, do something, and to change things up a bit.
I think it seems that certain companies seem to be hemorrhaging certain roles because they're not offering fully remote as well. But it seems that there's patterns in the sorts of people that are moving on for that reason. But yeah, I mean, we've lost a lot of people in certain roles for that reason, who have moved into roles where companies are offering fully remote.
Yeah,
So a lot of good talent as well.
Yeah, but those talent, I don't have the answer to this, but I have a suspicion that some of that talent, while being very valuable in many ways to that organisation, may well never be a valuable member of an agile team. Because one of the reasons they want to be fully remote is they want to work on their own. They don't want to be part of a collaborative team who rely on one another and work with one another to evolve something. And that's not to say that they're bad or bad employees or not valuable at all, but it is a way of perhaps self-selecting into an environment that is more suitable to your personality, perhaps.
Do you have a gut feel of? I mean, I suppose it's difficult to say. Gut feel policy is that it should be a percentage split, but do you have a gut feel based on experience of what a good policy would be? Not as I say, not percentage. It might just be, you know, use your discretion to come in when it seems like an opportunity when you need to come in.
Yeah.
What would a policy look like?
To treat everybody differently, to treat them the same. So if I was running a company and I had a product development team, my belief is that an agile approach is the best way to build and develop a new product. So I wouldn't want all those people spread all over the world. I would want, if I could, I would want people in the same time zone in the same place. But if I had work that didn't require collaboration, then I would want the best people wherever they are. And I think every organization is going to have a mix of those, which kind of brings me on to Ian's question. Let's see if I can link this, which is around working in an organization that's trying to use safe and worried that the organizational culture won't really change. It's going to carry on. And without wishing to invite any kind of legal challenge, I would probably say that my suspicions would be similar to yours here. And my suggestion for leaders is to try and get some kind of visualization of the organizational culture now. Work out what kind of organizational culture they think is appropriate for the space that they're in, and then get as much real-time data as they possibly can to test whether the changes they're making are creating more stories that map to that new culture or more stories that map to the old culture. Now, there are ways of doing that. They're not included within SAFE, but there are ways of doing it. And that kind of transparency. And so there was a really good sort of answer in there, which was, talk to them about what their beliefs are, what their views are, what their values are, what they're hoping to get from this. And that sense of transparency, I think, would come back to that previous question for me. When I'm hiring somebody, if I was in that hiring position, I would be saying that these are the beliefs. This is how we operate. This is how we believe we're going to deliver value. So if you're going to join this organization, this is what we kind of want from you. Are you happy with that? Now, a lot of people in their current organizations probably didn't have that conversation. So I feel for that this is an opportunity to rebalance things. Or a company that's hiring purely physically.
Yeah. And they're really struggling with it. Because, like you said, Geoff, employees are demanding, and there is plenty of other options which provide flexible working. I think so. I know another company that's been recruiting all the way through the pandemic, but they had a pretty firm. I wouldn't say it's as firm as this other company, but they wanted to hire people with the intention of saying, largely by default, we are an in-person on-site company. Okay, we value people being in the office, regardless really of their roles, I think. But what they said was that you've got to try and anticipate and assume by default we want to be an on-site company. But we can be flexible if we need to be. Okay, so if you need to be at home to take a parcel delivery on a Friday, be at home on a Friday. But I think the overwhelming drive was not exclusively, but by and large, you're going to be face to face with people in the office every day if we can.
Now, for me, the key is has the rationale for that been explained, and does it make sense? Does it land?
Yeah, I think it has. Yeah.
And what we see mostly in the news, right, is banks have told their workers they have to come back to the office. Now, if the message is you're coming back to the office, regardless, just do it. You are an employee. You are contracted to. We want you to. Therefore, you will. Then, even if it's the right thing, it will be resisted. And that, to me, smacks of we don't trust you. which would then lead to a distrustful relationship. But if it's a case of, well, as Paul was saying there, we understand things are difficult, things have changed, and, we're flexible, but this is what we need to be successful as an organisation.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair conversation to have. I think you'll see these organisations, some will come out of this and they will fail because they haven't approached it correctly. Some will not be able to replace the people they've got. Some will go too far the other way. And some people will probably make decisions that go too far the other way because that's what we do. And then it will settle down. And when it does settle down, there will be some organisations that are in a much better place, some organisations that are in a terrible place, and others that will be able to learn from their lessons, such as the way of the early adopters. We have another question from Josh. Wanting to move from developer to project manager. So you've done that, Paul. Paul used to be a Java developer.
I was an amazing Java developer. Well,
when Paul joined our team, our boss described him as a Java guru.
I was like the savior of Geoff. I was described as I was coming from Cardiff to Exeter or to Bristol.
Big money transfer in the world of BT.
I was going to save that team and bring them into the 20th.
Didn't quite work out that way, though, did it?
Didn't, mate. No. Moving from developer into project management. Some ways to find project management. Okay.
I think there's got to be a bit of a passion for it. I think there's got to be a passion for anything. So, be able to explain your why. So why do you want to move? And not why do you want to get away from where you are, but why do you want to be where you want to be? Because those are two different things. And then, really think about yourself, think about your answer. There's a really good episode of Peppa Pig. I mean, all of the episodes of Peppa Pig are really good, right? But there's one where Madame Gazelle, the nursery teacher, asks the kids what they want to be when they grow up. And one of them says, "Oh, I want to be a police. I want to be a policeman." So, "Oh yeah, that's interesting. Why do you want to be a policeman?" "So I can tell people what to do." "Danny, what do you want to be?" I want to be a teacher." "Okay, that's really good. Why do you want to be a teacher?" "Because I can tell people what to do." And everyone wants to do a different job because they can tell people what to do, because kids can't tell people what to do, right? They're always told what to do. And that idea of, well, why do you want to be a project manager? Is it because you want to be in control, and there's no bad or whatever? So what is it about that you want? And then find the organization, the context, the domain that will allow you to have that. And the good thing with project management is that it spans, because I used to be a project manager as well, is that it spans industry. It's kind of transferable skills in that way. So you can always find some industry that is struggling for project management, and get whatever experience you can.
Because for me, it wasn't necessary. If I look back now, it wasn't necessarily around the project. I found a lot of the projects quite boring, really, but it was around the team. It was around people. I wanted to help coordinate people. I think that's how I kind of got involved in that, and I found I was quite comfortable talking to people. So I think you're right, Geoff. I think it depends what aspects of that role, and also if you've got this choice, Josh. But I don't know if it's whether it's within the same company or whether you're looking broader than that at different companies. But I would pay a lot if I was doing this again now. I would pay a lot more attention to the company that the projects were in. Is it the type of companies? Are they doing the types of things that I want to be part of? And that will probably increase my levels of passion for it. I think that's how I do things differently now.
The agile side of me would say, don't worry so much about the title.
Yeah.
So if you've got a job as a developer and there is the potential for this team to become more agile, then project managers. So when we were the BT, we had thousands of project managers, but we didn't have any ScrumMasters. And the idea of just get rid of all the project managers and hire some ScrumMasters. And the idea that in an agile team, you've got basically self-managing teams. So we're expecting the developers to do a lot more self-management, not just of themselves, but of their colleagues as well. So you have the opportunity there to take more management responsibility without having to find a new role. So you can test yourself, you can grow your skills, you can get some experience, you can prove to other people that you can take this kind of responsibility, you can do this kind of stuff, while still having a bit of fun messing around with some code, if that floats your boat. Anybody else have any advice on that?
I think that's good advice, Geoff. I mean, I'm a developer, become project manager, become ScrumMaster, and I find, I mean, if you like writing status reports and RAG reports and standing in front of a board and having your ass kicked week after week, then yeah, whatever floats your boat. But I was much more interested in kind of the looking after the team, the people management, helping them resolve their problems. Although I was a developer, I wasn't one to say, right, this is the way you should be doing it, guys. It's like, okay, tell me how you're going to solve this problem. What do you need from me to help you solve the problem? What resources do you need? Who do I need to tell to get off your backs and allow you to do stuff? That kind of thing. So yeah, as I said in the chapter, it depends what you want to do as a project. If you want to be a traditional waterfall type project manager, there's loads of stuff out there. I personally would say stay the hell away from prints, but each to their own.
It's interesting, Mike, you were talking about the ass kicking that you used to get as a project manager, and I think it goes back to what Paul was saying about being careful about the organization you work for, because that sounds like a cultural thing rather than necessarily all project managers are in the firing line all the time.
Well, just look at The Apprentice. I mean, I don't watch it. Some of you probably still watch The Apprentice. The idea that the project manager is the one on the line, right? They're the most likely to get fired, but they're also the most likely to get the glory.
Yeah.
And that is a cultural baggage that comes along with the term. But it's sort of, as Mike was hinting at, it's kind of old school, because the responsibilities in a more agile environment aren't there anymore. But that doesn't mean that that's the only way, right? So there are other places where project managers will have kind of accountability, they will have responsibility, and that's arguably the right thing. So finding those environments is key to making sure you're not a fish out of water. That's terrible. You're in the right pond.
Josh is asking why stay away from prints.
Mike was probably half joking about that. It's not as useful if you're going to be operating in an agile environment, because it's very structured, very formulaic.
It's the whole premise of prints is wrong. It's projects in controlled environments. It's like, who the hell works in a controlled environment? You know, all environments are out of control.
Some places that is a hell of a lot more effective and appropriate than others, but there are two variables that will affect no matter what environment you're in. One is people. Okay? So people add a level of complexity to any environment, how controlled. And the other is technology, because technology is always evolving and always advancing. It's never stays the same. It's never predictable. So you're always going to have elements of unknown, and prints can cope with unknown, but it can't cope very well with unknown. So I didn't actually go on the training course in the end, but I studied for print stuff.
You had a choice, didn't you, Geoff? You had a choice between Prints 2 and Scrum.
I made a choice. So I was booked on a Prints course back in 2002. And it was, so basically I was a project manager, so I needed to get a qualification. So my boss said, right, you're going on the Prints 2 qualification. And it was in somewhere, I don't know, I'll say Leeds, somewhere in the UK. And it cost, I'll say, £1,500. And I happened to find that there was a certified ScrumMaster class in Boston, Massachusetts, that with the flights and the certification came to less than the Prints 2 course. So I said, I can get a project management certification cheaper than the one that you're sending me. And just like people's brain flags up when you hear their name, when BT heard the word cheaper, they didn't hear anything else. It's cheaper? Brilliant, do it. So I managed to get my CSM instead of going on my Prince 2. But while studying for it, I think there's a lot that you can take from it. I think you can take a lot from anything, as long as you're not looking to apply it religiously.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in there in terms of organisation, in terms of critical path, in terms of dependency management that you could probably take out and apply in different circumstances.
We had a lot of resistance back in BT in the day, saying, about Scrum's lack of governance and things like that, and saying, well, Prince has governance. And it was a long time ago, Geoff, but I remember we did a piece of work where we just literally mapped one to the other. I think we went through the whole Prince framework, or the Prince methodology, and we mapped we mapped every stage gate, every process point to an equivalent part of the Scrum framework. Showed it to the auditors, and they kind of went, "Oh, okay," and that got them off our back for a long time. It can do the same things, it's not, it can handle them, but Prince just tends to be more heavyweight and more time consuming, and it comes with a big old it probably still just does come with a big manual as well.
One of the first things it said, I can't, because they have different versions, but basically the PM bot, the project management body of knowledge, is what I think Prince 2 was assessing in Big Book. But right at the start of that, it used to, I don't know whether it still does, it used to say, only use as much of this framework as we need.
Yeah.
But what we found was that if there was something in there, then it gave somebody an excuse for it to be used. So always too much framework, always too much process was being used. And it stifled not just innovation, but delivery as well, because there were so many stage gates and so on. But yeah, I don't want to, I think I hate SAFe more than I hate Prince.
I was going to say, do you feel that SAFe has replaced Prince as
in many ways
as an overblown framework?
I'll tell you why, Duncan. Because Prince nails its colours to the mast. To me, it is what it says it is, and it makes no apologies. Whereas SAFe is waterfall in agile clothing. It's pretending to be agile, and it's nowhere near.
There you go, ladies and gents. You heard it there. It's been recorded, Geoff.
I said that with a finger.
That's got to be all over. That's going to be all over the internet tomorrow. Geoff Watts quoting that.
It's a way of selling very expensive training courses, certification courses.
But certainty sells, doesn't it? That kind of thing. So, recipes sell. People love those things. It's very attractive to the right type of people.
Yeah. Anything else? Anything else you
Any
got?
other questions? Any other topics? Throw any other curveballs in there.
I wouldn't mind looking back to the remote teams topic. If we can, just Geoff, earlier on you said that you turned down a gig because it was a team that were having difficulties, but it sounds like they were the team that had always been remote, maybe. Now, and you said, if you've got a team that's established and then they go remote, it can work. I guess a lot of us probably going to be working with teams that were created during all of this and are never going to be together. So I guess the question is, how do we help them? I know you wouldn't necessarily take that job on. So, or Paul, you might not, but what would you do if you were working with a team where they were spread across the country or several countries and there were engagement issues?
So I was slightly facetious when I said I turned it off. Okay. So the more accurate description was, I told the client that they would not get value for money spending that money with me. They should save that money. And as it turned out, they've waited. Restrictions have changed. We've now got it set up in person. But so I gave you that clarification because my default response is the art of the possible. So meet whoever it is that you're working with, where they are, and do the best you can. So, and always look to get better. So the caveat, it's not really a caveat, but I suppose the critical variable there is, does that team want to make the best of that situation? And I think for most teams that have been hired into it, yeah, they probably do, because they've bought into this they've gone into it with eyes wide open. There was forgive me, I can't remember the full name, but there's a retrospective tool which is a very short exercise, but it basically asks people whether they turned up to this retrospective and feel like a prisoner or a tourist or whatever. And I think if you've got people who are remote who feel like a prisoner, it's much harder to help them. And it's much harder to help everybody else. So I think it's definitely possible. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely possible to have a really fully functioning team, fully remote, because we've been part of them ourselves. We've seen it even before the pandemic. We've seen it. It's a lot harder. It takes a lot longer. It requires more effort and energy from everyone. But with that kind of attitude that you've got there, David, of how can I help them, you've just increased your chances of success.
I've got a question, if I may be so bold.
Go for it.
So my team has been established during the pandemic. I want to know what everyone's views are on being a wee bit dictatorial. Don't like the use of that word in this scenario, but I've forced my team's hand to get them to try it. So for instance, I've said to them all, my expectancy is at least one day a month, we will all be together in a place that works for the majority, because they're all over the place in the UK. But without that nudge, it wouldn't be happening. So I work for a bank, and we are going back hybrid. So the expectancy from the board is 2/3 days a week. But that's up to you what those 2-3 days look like. So to get my team together and start collaborating, do the odd retro face-to-face instead of a Miro, I've said, and I've given them 2 months notice, but from March for the rest of the year, first Tuesday of the month, we're going to be together. So ordinarily you'd let the team decide, etc., etc. So what's your views on how I've approached this?
Without knowing more about the team, I can't give you a brilliant answer. My instinct, knowing you, is that you've sensed the room, and that kind of will have been welcomed. So there are some teams at some point who, and this could be quite a touchy subject for some teams. This could be quite almost a taboo conversation. I'm sure you've heard the idea of the silent majority, where the few that complain fill the air, and everybody else is, I don't really want to have an argument about it, so I should have a stake on it. But as soon as one person says, hold on a minute, I've got a different need here, or I've got a different perspective, and other people go, yeah, okay, maybe I can join forces. I've got someone on my side.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea of just putting something out there, I guess my instinct would be, if I was going to do something, would be to almost put my feelings out there and say that I find it really difficult never seeing people. I really miss the connection. I really miss being able to actually think things through and talk things through with other people. I would really value seeing you all every now and again. Does anybody else feel the same?
You're quite right though, Geoff, that I did read the room, and that is why I've waded in before the silent majority had their voices, because I knew who they are and I know it's coming. So I kind of went in before they had the opportunity to wreck it.
Do you think they will try and sabotage it when it happens, Sarah?
1 or 2 maybe. No, and I know, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that the being together for the remainder will outweigh that.
I can imagine scenarios where you could take the this is going to happen. You could take the this is going to happen because I would like this to happen because please do this for me. There are lots of different ways of floating something. Lots of different ways of making a decision. But sort of, you know, I focus a lot on what makes a team a real team. And one of the things that I see makes a real team is every member of that team will put themselves out a little bit for the needs of their teammates. Not all the time, but sometimes. And if getting together was really, really important, once a month was really, really important to one of my teammates, even if it was just one, I would feel a really crap teammate if I vetoed that.
And also, the other thing I was going to mention is around without treading this very fine line here between into manipulation, but trying to look at other instances where other team members have done something else to help someone else out. Other instances or examples completely unrelated as a team in a retro, or bringing it up in a retro, instances in the last sprint where we have gone out of our way to make someone else feel better or to allow, and then that draws out other instances where it's nothing to do with being in a room together, but we've helped each other out, or we've done something that we didn't want to do to make someone else feel better, or to make someone else's day go a bit smoother. And if the teams can start agreeing on the things that they've done in the past, it won't seem like such an outlandish thing to do it again in the future.
Different questions can get different answers. So as a brief example, you know, asking for a vote, how many people want to come in once a month? And you might get 50-50. Asking, Mike, would you join everybody in coming in once a month for our get together? I know you don't particularly want to, but would you do that, Mike? Directly asking. Maybe saying to Mike, what will it take for you to agree to come in once a month? Different questions, different answers. And so one thing I know you're very good at, Sarah, is reading the room. So yeah, you judge these things to make sense of it. It's gonna be lots of these conversations, and I think it's just another part of our working agreements as a team.
If they don't come, Sarah, I'll join you. Just tell me where it is. I'll come and join you.
You'll be so welcome, you know.
Cool. We were told we had an hour with you, and I think we reached that hour. Cheers, all.
And that's it. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bottoms up.
Cheers, everyone.
Enjoy.
Cheers.